Hey guys, my name is Jonas. I've been going to Junior 1 and Senior Camp for the last couple of years, and I'm actually really sad that I can't be at Menadew this summer. But this little video is a bit about me and a bit about my story about how God has worked in my life so far. So I grew up thinking that life was pretty good. I was top of my classes at school, and I was good at sport, and I thought I was pretty popular, and everything seemed to be going pretty well. And I was also brought up in a Christian family, and I don't remember ever really doubting God's existence. I always believed in Him, and I think I would have said that I had a pretty close relationship with God. And I think a part of me thought that there must be some correlation between my great life and my Christian faith. I thought that my life was good, so I thought that God must love me, and so I was pretty confident in my faith, perhaps for the wrong reasons. But thankfully, over the next few years, God kind of worked things out in my life to teach me a few things. And while I'm still convinced that God does love me, the reasons for that have changed quite a lot. And as I look back over the last 5 years or so, I think that there are three ways in which God has been at work in my life to change my heart and to help me live for Him. And the first one might sound a bit strange, but the first point about how I've seen God at work in my life is actually through suffering. I think, as I said, growing up I thought my life was pretty great, and I was quite grateful to God for that. But as I got older and as I started to have a bit more freedom, I became a typical teenage boy. And as I chased girls, and I played football, and I chased popularity at parties and at school, my relationship with God seemed to take a bit of a back seat. My identity became about this image that I wanted to display of being cool and popular and having a pretty girlfriend, but there was a real battle inside of me between who I wanted to be and who I wanted to be seen as, and who I thought that God wanted me to be. And there was a real conflict within me during these times, and me chasing after these relationships and these goals that I was putting my hope in, they weren't satisfying me, and it meant that I was making a mess of the relationships that I was in, and I found myself on a bit of a spiral of bad decisions and just poor choices, and it ended with me feeling pretty low, actually, and at least at the lowest that I had felt in my happy little life so far. And it was at this time that I started university. So I started, I moved to Bath, and I lived with a bunch of total strangers, and I actually found the first 6 months of uni really, really hard. These broken relationships and bad choices that I had made actually had taken a bit of a toll on my physical and my mental health, and I suddenly found myself pretty upset and angry and dissatisfied with life. But it was at this low point that actually I look back and see that God was working in my heart. I remember one particular day lying on my bed in my uni flat and feeling pretty miserable, and I felt this urge to call out to God for help and for some comfort, I guess. And as I did, I had a craving to listen to Christian music, and I would have never really listened to Christian music at that point, apart from maybe at church. But I remembered that my parents would listen to some, and so I started flicking through Spotify to see if I could find any songs that I recognised. And there was one that particularly stood out to me, and the lyrics said, "This is my desire, to honour you, Lord, with all my heart I worship you. All I have within me, I give you praise. All that I adore is in you. Lord, I give you my heart, I give you my soul. I live for you alone. Every breath that I take, every moment that I'm awake, Lord, have your way in me. And as I lay on my bed, I was crying, and I really spoke these words from my heart. I realised that all the ways that I had kind of rebelled against God, and sought my own journey, my own way of trying to make me happy, had actually led to depression and anger and dissatisfaction. But something began to work in my heart to show me that actually maybe what this song is saying, this is it. This is the purpose to my life, to love God and to submit to Him and to live for Him in everything that I do. And looking back, I see this as actually quite a pivotal moment in my life and in my walk with Jesus. It was at this time as well that I started going to a new church in Bath, and it's called St Bart's. And what I've learned to love about St Bart's is that St Bart's love the Bible, and I mean they really love it. And as I was battling these other things in my life, I began to understand and be taught some biblical truths that massively helped me to understand what I was going through and understand how God was at work through it all. So yeah, this is the second point of the three, and it's the Bible, and the love for it has had a huge role in transforming me as a Christian over the last few years. So it was towards the end of term at my first term at uni, and I was persuaded to join a student Bible study at church, and God was clearly working in that situation, because the first week I went there, the theme of the study was all about suffering as a Christian, and I was like, my mind was blown. Like, it spoke directly into the situation that I felt I was going through. And over the years at that church, I just grew to love the Bible. I loved the Bible teaching, and it was something that I'd never really experienced like this before going to university, and I loved it. I never read the Bible for myself growing up, but as I began to read it and study it for myself, I began to love it, and I began to read it daily. And I'm so thankful to my church in Bath for their love and passion and devotion to the Bible, because it really inspired me and became a vital part of my life. And I've come to find that the Bible is so life-giving and inspiring and important. And I'd suggest, actually, if you don't believe me, then I'd suggest it's because you're not reading it enough. And if you can find a way to fall in love with the Bible, then do it, and you definitely won't regret it. There have been a couple of biblical truths that have really helped me grow in my love for God over the years, and I think one that stands out for me is that the truth that God is sovereign, and that means that He is totally powerful and totally in control. Romans 8:28 says that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him. And the next verse describes what that good is, and it says that it is to be conformed into the image of His Son. So that means that God is so powerful and in control that as believers we can trust that every little thing in our lives is transforming us and making us to be more like Jesus. And that means that I can trust that in my struggles and in my pain and in the hardest times of my life, God is working all of those things for my good and for His glory. And this truth from the Bible really helps me make sense of things that go on in my life that otherwise I find really tricky to understand. The third thing that I want to talk about that's had a big impact on my life is apologetics. And that's a bit of a strange word, but it basically means having some answers to people's questions or objections to Christianity. And my passion for these types of conversations really began when I was part of the Christian Union at my university. And we put on an events week, which was a week of events devoted to telling people on our campus about Jesus. And we had a group of speakers and guests from the Oxford Centre of Christian Apologetics. So these people study the Bible, and they study philosophy and science and all sorts of other things. And they do that so that they can help other people understand Christianity and Jesus by answering some of their big life questions. And when these guys came and they gave talks and answered people's questions, I was totally blown away by these guys and their ability to answer really hard questions. And they had such brilliant answers to questions that either I had struggled to understand, or to questions that my friends had asked me before that I just didn't know the answer to. And it might sound a bit dramatic, but this week really changed my life. It massively inspired me to start reading the Bible and reading other books that would help me to be able to tell other people about Jesus and not be scared of the questions that they might ask. So I started reading loads and loads of books. And if you knew me before that week, you would have never have guessed that I would start enjoying reading books. Like, I used to hate reading, and even when I was doing my GCSEs, my mum actually read my English literature books to me because I hated reading so much. But as I read and read, I began more and more convinced that what Christianity offers is actually the truth. And it drove me to step out in my faith in big ways and tell others about Jesus too. So I just want to encourage you that if you have questions about Christianity that are preventing you from wholeheartedly following and trusting Jesus, then keep seeking answers to these questions, because I'm convinced that Christianity will stand up to every test you throw at it. And I'm convinced of the truth that the real historical person of Jesus Christ died on a cross 2,000 years ago to pay the penalty for something that you and I could never pay, in order that we could have the life-giving relationship with God that He created us to have. And not only am I utterly convinced that this is true, I am totally amazed at how incredibly wonderful this good news is. So that's a little bit about how God has been working in my heart and in my life. And as this goes out onto Facebook, it's my prayer that God will be working in your heart too, that you will come to see Jesus as your King and as your Saviour, and that you'll put your trust in Him wholeheartedly. So thanks guys, and I hope I'll be able to see lots of you soon.